The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhone. Typhone is a dramatically better digital banking provider. Our appeal is unique. We collaborate closely with our customers and the banking ecosystem in an open approach coupled with a powerful user experience that helps get things done. On our podcast, you will hear how digital banking plays a leading role for community-minded financial institutions from the unique perspectives of our industry expert guests.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Tatar. Today, I am super excited to have Margarete Mucker, the EVP of Operations for Star One Credit Union, on the show. Margarete, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Hey, great to be here.
So to give our audience a little background on yourself, Margarete, would you mind telling me a little bit about some of your past experience and maybe what a day in the life of Margarete looks like at Star One?
Busy. So I've been here at Star One, for 28 years. Can't believe it's been 28 years. It went by in a flash. Spent most of my time in operations and really in the last 15 years in remote services, being responsible for the digital banking channel and payments, cards. And then about 3 years ago, I was promoted to the EVP of Operations, where I oversee remote services, which includes the digital channel, lending, branches. So anywhere the member touches us, that's what I'm responsible for. So when we look at anything that we do, it's always having the member first at mind. And anything we do is always how can it benefit the member. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is always having the member is at forefront. And so my day, it's great. We would talk all day long about the current projects that we're working on, identifying issues and seeing what's going on in the industry and how we kind of fit into that and what new products and services we want to bring to our members. So it is good.
And Star One is a fairly unique credit union in a few regards as well. So for the small handful of people joining us who may not be familiar with Star One, can you tell us a little bit about the credit union?
Yeah. So for one, we're located in Sunnyvale in California, which is really Silicon Valley. So we're surrounded by fintech and the Googles and Facebooks and Apple of the world. Our membership was Lockheed Martin, so a lot of engineers, high-tech people. And because of that and the location, we're nearing the 10 billion mark, and we was about less than 115,000 members. So when you look at our assets, we're a really large organization. But when you look at the number of members, we're actually small. And we have about 210 employees.
What is the average members checking account at Star One on any day? It's like $70,000 or something.
Yeah, well, that's the savings balance. Yeah, so it is extremely high. And part of it is the areas that we're located in. It's a high tech. They make a lot of money and benefits Star One.
I always joke, it's only like $10 more than's in my savings account. No big deal.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Margarete, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. I can't even begin to tell you how many times in the last maybe 2 months I've told people that if the beer company Dos Equis, if they ever need a new spokesperson for the most interesting person in the world, like they should call you. And I just don't know if they could afford you, but I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn something new about you, both just personally and professionally. And I think one of the things that I actually don't know if you know this, but it's actually stuck with me and resonated with me over my time in this industry. Just hearing about your story and how you got into credit unions is really inspiring. So I don't know if we have time for the entire Lifetime movie that it deserves today, but could you maybe give us a little background on that?
What is the story? But, well, let's say it this way. Obviously, I'm not born here in America. I was born in Germany, and I met my husband. He was stationed in the Air Force in Germany. And when the tour was over, we actually ended up in the US, in California, for that matter. And I was working for the military bank on the base. And when we came back here to the States, one of my husband's boss, he actually told him, I said, "Oh, your wife worked at a credit union." He said, "Oh, like Star One has a credit union. Your wife should go work there." And anyway, so when my husband retired out of the military, we ended up here in Sunnyvale. And sure enough, I ended up working for what was called then the Lockheed Credit Union, and started as a teller. And then 28 years later, here I am. But it was just a fluke. Didn't plan on doing it, but it just happened. And it was the best thing that ever could have happened to us. Star One has been great. It's been wonderful. Like I said, 28 years flew by in a chance, and I love every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you work next to someone like Fred, Everything seems like it's just going a million miles an hour, right?
That's right. Very energetic.
I always joke that I always need to talk to Fred once a month or so because he like recharges my batteries.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
So you mentioned that your days are pretty busy looking at all the different projects and what it takes to keep Star One current and relevant to your high-tech members. So what does that look like? What are the things that you're looking at right now? What are the things that really pique your interest?
Well, obviously, payments is just a category that we're constantly looking at, and it's driven really by the members, right? So like I said, everything that we do is always either recognizing and understanding what our members are doing or what they're trying to do, and then trying to make that easy for them. And payments has been on our radar for the last 5 or 6 years, at least, where we're trying to figure out how can we make money movement faster for our members. We do a lot of wire transfers. So, okay, kind of taking a step back. So, our members have a high balance. They have a lot of money. And we also know that a lot of our members have accounts somewhere else where they have money. So for them to move money back and forth between their accounts is very important. And so the mechanism to move money, so sometimes it's a wire transfers or ACH. And a lot of members, they're buying things, they're doing investments. And so we're doing about over 6,000 wire transfers a year. It's like 20 a day, right? And a lot of them are international wire transfers. And what's so painful about wire transfers, for one, there's a lot of fraud. So we have to be very careful when we do it. And members want real time, right? They want same day. Over the years, we recognize that that's what they want. They want to transfer money and they want to do it quickly. So just like anybody else, we have an external funds transfer product, but it is limited. We have a limit on it. Also, it takes 3 days, right? And now it takes 2 days, but it's still not good enough. So we have learned that members want to move money. We have also learned the different products that we have probably 4 or 5 different vendors providing some sort of money movement feature. And each one has a different limit, has a different process, and it's very confusing to members to try to figure out what they should be using to send monies. And the external funds transfer which is account to account from a member's account here at Star One to their account at B of A or wherever. Also, our bill pay service has a P2P function, so members using it to transfer money, which we really don't want them to do it, but it's available, so they do it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we kind of moved towards Zelle, because we realized that members want to do a P2P service, and they were trying to use that bill pay function as one. We also knew that they're using Venmo and cash to transfer money. So that kind of what us got into Zelle. But really watching the industry over the last 4 to 5 years, trying to figure out which P2P service would rise to the top. It was a waiting game, right? If you remember, there was this merchant exchange. It was called Currency C, which were several merchants were trying to develop. Walmart was part of it to develop a P2P service, right? Zelle wasn't called Zelle at the time, but it was the banks, right? The B of A, Wells Fargo that were developing one. And there were a couple smaller ones. And so we were just sitting and waiting and saying, okay, which one's going to rise to the top and which one will make sense for us to participate in? And it took a couple of years, and it kind of in 2017, Zelle took off, right? That's when we made the decision to join Zelle as well and saying, okay, how can we get Zelle to our members? So to provide an easy way of moving money. At the same time, we were working also, same day ACH became available, right? When the Fed made the changes to same day ACH, we said, we want to be part of this. We want to have that ability for members to do a same day ACH transfer and get money to wherever they need to go same day. And so over the last couple of years, we did implement same day ACH. We did international ACH transfer, so members have the ability to send money overseas via ACH. And we implemented Zelle. And so we're constantly looking at how we can improve the money movement and what service works well for us in Star One. And also sometimes what is most cost effective as well. We know ACH is a really inexpensive channel. We try to utilize it. FedNow is now coming up with a real-time solution. So we're monitoring it. We're trying to be part of their beta network as well. So we get first-hand experience on how that would look like. So the payment and money movement is really important. And we see a lot of money flowing through, even through bill pay, right? Paying bills, and even members trying to use bill pay to make transfers as well, which we try to discourage, but
it doesn't always work.
So it's really a challenge for us to try to figure out how do we position ourselves for the money movement piece. And I think we're really made a lot of progress, but I think we still can improve the front end to when a member comes in and saying, how do you want to move money, to provide them with the most inexpensive and most efficient way to transfer funds.
We have a lot to unpack out of that. So I'm going to try to do my best to come back to a lot of those things. But, one of the things that really stood out to me as you were starting to talk about that, I want to just briefly touch on before we talk a little bit further about the payment ecosystem that you're looking at is, you made the comment that your members have a fair amount of money, but you also recognize that they have a fair amount of money at other institutions, and there's a lot of money moving around. How does Star One position itself to these H&I members to keep them from being a Chase private client? So is that something that Star One's constantly thinking about in your technology choices? And is that affecting how you're making these plays in the money movement space?
I guess the one thing that we have learned, we can't be all to everything, right? That we cannot be everything to our members that they want. So we have learned that we are good at certain things. And we feel really strongly about it. We created lending, we got great rates, great deposits, but we don't have a lot of other surrounding. We don't do financial advertising, financial advisors. We don't do business banking. So we believe we have a core principle that's really strong. We're really great at, and that's where we build on. And so because we don't offer investment accounts and stuff, we know that our members have money at Schwab or Fidelity, right? And we're okay with that. We always want more, like everybody, but we also recognize that we can't be everything to our members, and that we're trying to be good what we have, that we're trying to be the best at it, and not just mediocre at everything, but we're really, really good at certain things, right? That's our strengths. That's what we want to focus on. And so because of that, we're okay with them. We see that the money flows in and the money flows out, and it depends on the market as well, what's going on in the market. So, if the market is a little shaky, we see the money flow in. And once the market kind of recovers, then they're ready to invest again. And so the personal bankers, we believe we give great service overall as well. So I think we can compete. It kind of goes back. We still only have less than 115,000 members. So we still can provide that service. And yet I think we're good at the products that we offer. And that's what our members like. And that's what they're looking for, right? So if they look at a mortgage loan, we're in the market. We have great rates. We provide great service. And we don't sell our mortgage loans to the second market. We keep the servicing. So when the rate drops and they want to lower their rate, we just let them do a modification. All they do is fill out a form. I want to modify my rate. There's a small fee we charge, and we modify their rate. It's not like a refinancing. It's really just changing the rate, and they get the newer rate for a minimal, anywhere between $500 and $1,500. The max is $1,500 to modify your rate for a 30-year loan. So we have a lot of little nuggets, I call them, that are really good, and that kind of helps with the retention. And the other thing is Star One has a high retention rate. We're in the 90 percentile. And so we know that retaining a member is really important to us, and it's also profitable, and instead of constantly churning members, keeping members long-term, that's where we get the balance. Right? So we kind of recognize we have a nice little niche. It works well for us, and we focus on that.
No, it makes sense. So two things. First, this is a conversation for another time, but why isn't my mortgage at Star One then?
Really?
That does make a lot of sense, Margarete, is because one of the things that I see as an outsider looking in at Star One is that, like you said, you're not trying to be all things to everyone. It does look like you go very, very deep into the areas where you do decide that Star One's going to play. And so that definitely includes the ability for members to move money. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, wasn't Star One the first credit union to do an international cryptocurrency transaction or something? I mean, you guys are really pushing the envelope.
Yeah, we did. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. We did with, can't think of the vendor, but it was Bitcoin. But it was a real-time transaction using the blockchain technology, but it was in US dollars. So full disclosure, we don't really want to deal in Bitcoin, and because we don't know who really owns it. So it was important for us that it had to be in US dollars, and we worked with it, and we actually did that, and it worked flawlessly. But what happened, the bank that was in the middle of it, they actually pulled out of it. And we don't know why, but that kind of put that, we tested it, it worked, and then the bank pulled out of it. And then the vendor was trying to find some other intermediaries that would transfer the funds, right? And I always thought that some of our big banks here in the US, like Wells Fargo or B of A, they should be part of that because they actually could make money on it. But for some reason, they're still using the old chaotic ways of transferring funds, and even like wire transfers, right? It goes through 5 different bank systems, especially if it's an international one, to reach the destination. And each bank takes a little chunk out of that money. So by the time you wire $1,000, and user may get $750 out of that, right? So the system is kind of broken. And so I think, so we were looking at ways to make that less costly for members. They shouldn't be penalized, right? That they wire money somewhere else and then all the fees are taken out along the way. So it was a great test, but unfortunately it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but it shows that you're willing to try.
Oh, yeah.
So Star One was also, I know you've mentioned it a little bit, and I think this is one of the things that we really need to unpack that I think people are really clamoring to hear about is Zelle, right? So Star One was one of the initial 20 institutions a part of the Zelle network.
Yeah. So we signed the contract with Zelle in 2017. It is just amazing. And the initial, there was initials of 6 banks, and there were a couple of credit unions. And then I think we were the 4th credit union to join. And then our adventure began. And it was certainly an adventure.
Wait, you mean it doesn't end when the contract's signed?
No, it began. Yes. So, like I said, it was almost 3 years ago, and many different factors, right, that played into the length of time it took to get that done. In the middle of it, we decided to convert online banking to Typhon. So that took a few months out of our development time because that was more important to convert. But once we picked it back up, and one of the difference, I guess, with Zelle was also we wanted to do it direct. We didn't want to go through a reseller. We don't develop in-house. We don't have programmers and develop in-house, so we don't have that. So we looked who could do that for us, and we actually went out to Typhon and asked Typhon if they were willing to help us become part of Zelle and help us build it. So that's what we've been working on, and I'm happy to say we're live. It's working. It's great. Our members, we're still calling it a soft launch, so we haven't really done a lot of marketing, but our members know it's out there, and it's in our mobile app, and we have about I would say 140 transactions a day going through it, and for not advertising and they just accidentally find it, it's great. And it gives us an opportunity to tweak some of the settlement things that we have to do. Zelle did not come with a playbook. Everything that we learned along the way, and the whole settlement aspect of it, we also had to figure that out on the back end. So we're doing great. There's a couple of hiccups here and there, nothing major, and it's working. And we're actually excited about it. And we continue to say we made the right move. We feel we really positioned for the future.
I think we talk about money movement as a whole, right? And just making it easier for members to be able to say, I want money to go from point A to point B, and you're my institution, you're the expert here, you figure it out. But there is still some of these niche cases of areas and ways that members can and want to move money, right? And I think P2P is one of the big ones right now, because there's the big players, right? I use this reference a lot that you don't say, I'm going to take a car sharing service. You say, I'm going to take an Uber, right? You don't say, I'm going to pay you back for lunch anymore. You say, I'll Venmo you, right? So there's a little bit of a mountain for us to climb. And you really have the option of one, just saying, okay, member, use Venmo, which is essentially saying we're not offering a P2P, using a bill pay or a pop money type of service, or being a part of Zelle. Right? There's not a lot of other options out there. So one, I think that this is an area that while Zelle is kind of being a disruptor, I think there's also still a lot of opportunity for disruption there. But what were the things that went through Star One's strategic process for deciding on Zelle? And now that you have Zelle, what's next?
So one of the strategic facts why we went with Zelle was importance of being able to transfer from a credit union account to a big bank. Right? We know that our members have money. I mean, our competition is B of A, Wells Fargo. It's not the local credit unions or the community banks. It's a big bank. So those are our competition. And our members do have accounts there, and they do want to transfer funds to be of a big network that we do foresee that eventually that is the biggest probably money movement or P2P service that you get. Also, it is run by financial institutions. So we know the compliance is there, right? With Venmo and even PayPal, they're not really banks. Some of them follow some kind of compliance, but some of them just build the application and just hope everything works out. But when you ask them, it looks great at the front end, and you say, oh my God, this looks really great. And then when you ask them a question about the settlement and about fraud and about who's responsible, then all of a sudden it kind of falls apart a little bit. And
it gets a little fuzzy pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, you don't get clear. And what was important to us, it was that the ability to transfer some money to big banks and back and forth, and having the big banks manage the network. Even so, we're a credit union and would sometimes fight with the banks a little bit, but at least we knew that it was a secure and safe network, right? So that really helped us make us the decision. So we have more faith in Zelle than, let's say, Venmo. Now, Venmo was acquired, and it's a different story, but the backing of the big banks was important in this kind of network. And I was talking with my CEO the other day, and he mentioned Visa started with Bank of America, right? Kind of like same thing. Visa became its own. Zelle started with a bank, and now Zelle, it's becoming a major network. So we felt that that was a good sign and support. And when Zelle came out and the way they proposed Zelle, we felt that was strategically the best way to go. We felt that had a lot of sound concepts. And the other thing, what members really looking for when he's talking about different money movement, they want it quick and easy, right? So when you're talking about external funds transfer, a lot of times you have to do the trial to establish a transfer. So your initial transfer, you have to do a trial deposit, right? You have to establish that you're the owner of that account. Well, that is a process that takes 2 to 3 days, right? Members don't want to go through that. They do. I mean, we have it, but it's a hurdle. Nobody wants to do that. I want to send you money today, not 3 days later. It's today. I want you to send some money, and I want you to have it within an hour, right? So that's why Zelle is so attractive, right? Because you don't really need anything but a phone number or an email address.
You know what I find interesting, though, is you kind of alluded to the fact that Zelle is almost the evil that you know, but it's still a little on the evil side. I think that's what I find hard is for community FIs, there's still some apprehension to that. There is no necessarily clear-cut, easy, there's no drawbacks offering, right? So I think one of the things that I hear a lot as I talk to other credit unions is, where do I start? I feel like I need to have Zelle. I need to be a part of the network, or I'm really concerned about it and I'm trying to figure out how to fight that. But where do I start? So you've been through this whole thing. You've got it live. So what's your advice to credit unions? Where do they start? And what are the things that they need to be really conscientious about as they go through this process of looking at not just Zelle, but P2P as a whole?
I guess a part of it is a business decision, right? How important is a P2P service to you? Right? There is definitely a cost to it, and you don't see the payoff right away. I mean, it's not like we're seeing the payoff right away and saying, oh, the ROI, we have an ROI. No, the ROI will come in 5 to 10 years. It's not visible right now. Right now, we're paying more for the service and we're not making money on it. Let's say it's costing us money, but that's not our primary concern, right? Our primary concern to be part of a money movement that we felt was going to be on the top of all the P2P services and be in the top tier. And the attractiveness was that it was working with the different banks, right? Instead of using that external funds transfer, they can use Venmo, right? Third-party transfers is still a challenge because of fraud, right? So Zelle just filled a need, right? We look at our transaction activity. Obviously, we see PayPal, we see Venmo, and we saw the numbers increase over the last few years, right? As it became more attractive in the market. And it's just like the younger generation that uses it, but then they get their older generation involved in it because, let's say, oh, mom, send me money. I want you to use Venmo because it's right away, right? So the young generation is teaching the older generation of what they should be using. So to us, Zelle filled a need, and we felt good about the network. We felt good about the setup, that it was connected to the big banks. We actually saw it as a positive, even so we have our disagreements with the big banks sometimes. But it's no different than using ACH network, right? We're all connected to the ACH network, right? And we all, whether it's banks, community, credit unions, it's one big network that services everybody. And that's how we look at Zelle. It's probably going to be a big network. It's going to service everybody. So how do you get into it? Well, you're going to have to find out, who can you talk to? Is it your online banking vendor that can help you with this? Is it your processor that can help you with that, right? For smaller institutions, it's a little bit more difficult. We learned, even us, even so we're large in assets, but even for us, it was a challenge. And Zelle actually has some guidelines as well. At first, they were very open. Then they narrowed down because I think Zelle got overwhelmed with requests as well. And the implementation process, they told us initially, about 6 months. It took longer. So I don't think they were ready for the impact and the number of FIs that actually wanted to be part of network. So I think they kind of scaled back a little bit about how many they can take on. So a lot of the smaller credit unions or community banks, they're going to have to rely on a third party to help them with that, right? To kind of get Zelle going. But we do believe that Zelle is a network that is the P2P service of the future.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're going to really want good technology partners next to you to help. But there's also a fair amount of heavy lifting that has to be done at the credit union side, right?
Yes, it was a big commitment on our end. And it's interesting. So we don't have an IT department that drives our innovation. It is each department drives their own innovation and our IT or IS department supports it, right? We're pretty flexible. Of course, we have meetings and we talk about the upcoming projects of what we entertain. So the IS department knows potentially what kind of resources it's going to require. But we have that freedom to say, hey, we want to look at this and we want to bring this in-house. Then we work on it. And what was different with Zelle, it actually did take, I think, 5 different departments, plus there was like 6 or 7 vendors involved. So this was probably, in our eyes, the biggest project we ever did. And because it was all new, so it was even a little bit more interesting, but it was slightly different because it did take different departments where other projects can be mostly done by the department and only needs a few resources every once in a while. This one needed a lot of resource, but it's manageable. So I don't want to scare anybody away from that. It sounds overwhelming, but just having the monthly meetings, weekly meetings, as you go through the process and kind of completing your tasks in the timeline, it is manageable. So it is doable, but it is a big project.
Now, I know that Zelle is a big project, right? But you were saying that it's also important for you guys to look at other different ways that members are moving money. So what are the other areas that you're seeing? You talked a little bit about wires, but what are some of the other ways that you're seeing members want to be able to move money? And what are the things Star One's really doing to address that?
Well, I mentioned same-day ACH, so that was really important because it's another way members can move money. It's a higher limit. We feel comfortable with the ACH network. Same-day ACH allows you to transfer funds up to $25,000 right now, right? Well, that is a lot more money than we allow in our external funds transfer service, and it's same day. And our members love it, right? If they have to pay, if they want to transfer funds to their other financial institution, if they paying for somebody, paying a contractor, they can do that in its same day. So to us, it filled a need, right? And then the other thing is, so with our wire transfers, because of the very labor intensive, because we do a lot of verification, it's our most expensive product that we have, basically. And a lot of members are doing wire transfers, which is a $40, $60 fee, $35 if it's domestic and $60 if it's international. But sometimes it's small dollar amounts. But again, they want the money the same day. So we were trying to figure out how can we provide a better service that takes us less time to do it, right? Less resources our end is actually less expensive for the member. And that's same day ACH fills that need. So we're trying to convert members over. International ACH is the other product that we implemented last year because we see a lot of foreign international wire transfers. It's the same thing. If they can do it via ACH, it's much cheaper. It gets there and it's just as secure and safe as a wire transfer. So we're trying to meet our members' needs and trying to give them the most cost-effective channel to do that. And like I said, a lot of this is driven what members have asked. How do I get the money there? How quickly can I get it there? I need it there tomorrow because I'm buying a car. And if I don't get the money there, the car is gone. So that's how it's kind of developed. We're listening to the members, they voice their opinion, and then we're trying to come up with a product that can meet their needs. And then a lot of times it also depends on the industry, right? That makes like same day ACH. When they came out with same day ACH, we all said, oh, finally, right? Because, we've been waiting for a long time. With the Fed now, which is a little behind time, they want to come out with a real time network, right? Which kind of could be competition for Zelle, maybe potentially, right? But they're a little bit behind. It's going to take time for them to catch up. But in the future, it could be really a viable product as well. We see how members can get creative in moving money to fill their needs. And we look at it sometimes and it's like, why are they doing it? And then we realize it's like, well, because we don't make it easy. So they try to move a larger dollar amount and we have limits. So they're trying to do 3 transfers, right, instead of just doing 1. And it's like, why are we doing that? Why do we initiate 3 transfers if they could just do it in 1? But the one thing with faster payments and with all those great products that we have, fraudsters love those products as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that is a challenge, right? That is a challenge that fraudsters, they social engineer our members. And of course, they get their online banking login credentials, log in. What do? They do a same day ACH or Zelle. Same day. By the time we realize next day what happened, the money is gone, right? It's a challenge and we're working with it. But it's not the product that has a flaw. It's our members, right? It's our members who fall victims to those scams, right? One of the scams with Zelle is that everybody wants to buy a puppy, right? They're at home, they want to have somebody warm and fuzzy with them. And they see an ad and the seller of the puppy says, oh, just sell me the money and then I ship you the puppy. Well, they send the money via Zelle, no puppy, but the money's gone, right? One of the things that Zelle advertises and us as well, it's important, just like anything else you do in banking, know who you're sending money to, right? Just don't send it to anybody. You've got to validate that it's legit. But the fraudsters are so good at convincing our members that it's real and they're trusting and things happen. So that's the challenge of having same day funds transfer mechanism, but also with that comes some fraud, right? Because the fraudsters also like that very much. Same day, they get it in their account. By the time you find out, they already withdrew the money on the other end.
Yeah. Now, I know one of the things that you guys are doing there at Star One, though, and you've been doing this for even prior to Zelle, was doing some work with Guardian Analytics that's now Nice Actimize, right? So what are you doing there to try and help cut down on some of that fraud as you're trying to balance speeding up payments and making it more accessible and easier for your members to accomplish while mitigating some of that fraud and risk?
So obviously Guardian Analytics does some of the IP address validation. So if it's a login from a different location to give us alerts, so that helps us. So the analyst that manages that and looks at those alerts, obviously the first thing they look when they get an alert is like, okay, what did they do in online banking, right? And sometimes alerts will get us initiated a Zelle, same day ACH transfer. I mean, we see it and we're on top of it. So the speed is important. Real-time analysis is important. Oh, I had another thought and it just left me. But also, so we rely on that. It's working really well for us. But the other thing is the out of wallet, the OTP, right? Passcode. That is another piece that we implemented. So you log into online banking, you may get an OTP if you log in from another browser. But when you go in to do a same day ACH, you're going to get another OTP, right? We want to make sure that you may have gotten the online banking credential, but do you also have the phone where that OTP is going? And that has helped a lot. So we're trying to come up, and that's really a challenge. And we're looking at it now. It's like, what else can we do, right? Without impacting member service. Another thing where maybe Star One, we're pretty liberal in our limits. We have high limits because the need of our members is such that they need to move higher dollar amounts. So there's a higher risk, right? Because $25,000 could be gone just that quick. So we're always looking at it, okay, what else can we do to protect our members and identify an opportunity to prevent something? So the one good thing with wire transfers, we actually talk to every member that initiates a wire transfer that comes online. So it doesn't come through the branches, but online. And we actually call them back and we do verification, ask a lot of questions, right? But we find out sometimes that they are victims of scams. And we kind of tell them, don't send that money. That is a scam. Do not do that, right? So we have an opportunity to interject that transaction. But when it comes to sell or same-day ACH, we don't have that opportunity, right? Because it goes right away. So it's really what we're looking at. It's really member education. We have to educate our members because they always think, oh, it doesn't happen to them. It's somebody else. Oh, it doesn't happen here at Star One. It happens over at B of A. It doesn't happen to me. And that is trying to get some mindset that it can happen to actually anybody if you're not diligent in what you're doing, right? And validate and verify before you actually send money. So we're looking at it. We have a lot of systems in place that protects members, but the members are our weakest link.
It's such an important point. You can do everything in your power. You can put all of these different tools in place and out of band questions and OTPs and multiple layers of security, and you can run all the analytics. But if the real member really wants to send that money for that puppy.
Yeah.
So, I think that's one of the things. This comes back to the benefit of really truly community minded FIs where, like you said, we pick up the phone and call and say, hey, you're transferring this money. So what's going on? From our experience, that sounds like a scam. And maybe that's a little bit different than just coming from a child, right? This is at least coming from your financial institution who's looking out for your financial well-being, somebody telling you, hey, you know what? That's maybe not the greatest of ideas.
Yeah. And trust me, we also have members who challenge us, just adamant and saying, you can't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to send this money. And they do, because we can't stop them. But many times they come back and they say, oh my God, you were right. And it's too late. But staff is doing their best and they do get some pushback from members and we still ask the questions. And if they are insisting of it, then we'll do it. But we have a way to do it with wire transfers. But with the other services that are strictly online and there's no interaction with staff, right? Because of convenience too, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a balance.
Yeah, that's where we really have to rely on some of the systems. And going back to Guardian Analytics, they are working on a real-time interface that when they see potentially where a transaction, there's a flag that it could be fraudulent, it won't let that transaction go. So we're not quite ready yet. It's almost ready. We have 3 months worth of data to analyze the predictability. And that's what we're working on right now. So we're hoping that it's going to be another piece in trying to protect our members against fraud.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about is you're putting all these mechanisms in place to help members move money faster. And we're thinking about the future of how do I teleport money from A to B? But just out of curiosity, you're still seeing a ton of people depositing checks too, right? So
yeah, mobile deposit is our number one. And it's really interesting that the shifts that we have seen over the last, I would say 8 years from branch ATM deposit to mobile, even our members who we think sometimes some of them are high tech, but some work in engineers and they don't trust the online systems because they think it can be hacked and they try to not to use them. But it's amazing how that shift has happened to the mobile, and 80% of our deposits comes from mobile now. And it's amazing. And part of it, once again, for Star One, we wanted to make it easy on members. So should say it very quietly, we don't have a limit on mobile deposit. Our members can deposit any amount, right? But we have back office process in place to make sure it's a legit deposit, right? So we have tools in place through our vendor, our staff. We do review every deposit that's over $25,000. So we have a lot of processes in place to make sure that it's legit. But for the member, it's a great service because a mobile deposit is just as safe as walking into a branch and making a deposit. And we didn't want a limit to stop our members from using mobile deposit because there is no limit in the branch. In the ATM, you can deposit any check amount. There are no limits. Why would you put a limit on mobile? Because then you push members to the other channel, right? They go back to the branch. Mail-in deposits, we still have those, didn't go away yet.
Who said paper's going away?
So we're trying to make our products such that a member can say, oh, because you have a limit, I couldn't deposit my check, right? Or whatever reason. So we're trying to really make it that every channel has the same ability. So there are no restrictions to a member. They're free to choose which ones they want. It's their personal preference. It's not because there's different limits in different channels.
But it sounds like there's definitely some opportunity there for streamlining some back office processes, because it sounds like Star One's got two options: make it easier for member or make it easier for us. I can tell which route you're going. You're going to take the work on yourself.
But then we're trying to be efficient, right? I mean, we're doing a calculated process, and then we're working on improving that and automating that process. So yes.
So in Margarete's eyes, what's the ideal end state for money movement for credit unions and members? Like, what are you trying to get to? Or is that even something that's mapped out yet, or you think is even possible?
Well, we want to make it easy. So one of the things is, how do you take all the different systems that we have, right? And how do you let the members know which ones they should be using? And trust me, I haven't figured it out yet. I just know that when I look at our different money movement products, I always say, okay, how can we bring it down to like one? We always think about the members, and does a member care which way a money moves? Do they care whether it's ACH, whether it's a wire transfer, whether it's bill pay? Do they really care, right? Or do they just want the money from one point to the other?
They only care if time or cost is a factor, right? But otherwise, just make it move.
And we get hung up on that, right? We who are in the business, we get hung up on that and saying, oh, maybe they do care and maybe they don't want to move it this way. No, as long as the member is protected or understands the rules, right, regarding a money movement, because there are different rules to file claims for a wrong transfer. Sometimes they transpose a phone number and the money goes to somebody else. Well, you got to be careful, right, when you do things. So to us, it's trying to make it easy for our members. And with that external funds transfer product, I still like to bring it in-house. We do our own origination, so we can do our own files and settlement. And it's like, okay, this third-party vendor, how can I bring it in-house now? Because I don't really need the third party anymore. And when I bring it in-house, then I have more control over the process, the settlement, especially the way ACH is moving, that they have more windows when to transmit and settle files. So potentially, if I do it in-house, I could settle or send a file every hour if I wanted to get the money faster. Right now, there's a window at 11 o'clock and one at 4. So if I bring it in-house, then I can decide, okay, I want to do 11, 2, and 4, or whatever I want. So it's important for us to have control. So we don't like to be restricted by our vendors. We like to have control and manage what we think it's best. So that's kind of like when we're looking at things, it's like, okay, how can we make it better? And sometimes having control means you take on a little extra work, but in the end, to us, it pays off.
Well, Margarete, we should probably wrap this up so I can go buy a puppy.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. I think, like I said, this is an area of a lot of discussion in the industry right now, is how do we make money move more seamlessly? And while there's lots of options and not a lot of options at the same time, I think there's a lot of opportunity for individuality in the approaches that credit unions and community FIs take when they look at how are we going to best service our members, our customers? How are we going to make this work the best for us? Well, Margarete, thank you so much for your time. Before we close out, I'd love to hear maybe some of your favorite resources. How do you stay up to date on what's happening in this industry?
Oh my God, I get a lot of emails. And one of them, I said, it's like, you probably is the second highest email recipients, like tons and tons and tons. So I do payments. I do the financial brand, which I really like. I do get the NCUAs and some of our trade organizations emails. I subscribe to a lot, which in the morning, the first 30 minutes, I just kind of glance through it, but it highlights. I also subscribe to Finextra, which is kind of like a European subscription. They do address a lot of stuff, and they seem to be ahead of other people. It could be the timing, right? Time that Europe is ahead than 8 hours in the US. A lot of time I do get a notification for them in the morning, and I said, oh, wow, this is interesting. And then later in the day, I get it from the trade papers here. But it's just a lot of information. I just read the headlines in some respect, just to see what's going on, right? You just get a feel for what's going on in payments, who's doing what. And then some things will spark my interest, and I actually will read the article, right? But there's no way I can read everything. things. But it's the headline that makes the difference. COVID-19, this remote thing and not being able to go to conferences, right? Conferences are absolutely the greatest. Not only do you get to see the vendors, but you get to talk to the people. And then you get to hear what they're using, what they like, what they don't like, right? What they think is going on in the industry. And I always find that very valuable. So right now I have to refer to the trade papers and what's going on. But Financial Brand, they come out every day and they talk about everything from payments, branches, virtual, digital banking, mobile banking, right? We feel they really have a good grasp of it. A lot of it is also thinking future strategic, what may happen in the next 3 to 5 years, where we should be. And so I just kind of read and pass it on when I think it's important, and then we have a discussion potentially, right? But what I'm really interested right now is, and I call it a virtual branch. We have that ITM, the video conferencing ITM. We kind of tried it. We didn't like it. We're trying it again with a different vendor, and hopefully it'll be better this time, second time around. But also we're trying to really kind of bring our branches delivering services to our members through the branches, but remotely, right? And so that virtual branch, so COVID-19, obviously we had branch appointments, members could make appointments. And then we said, let's do a phone appointment, right? Because we had to limit traffic in the branches, couldn't have it packed. So we said, okay, either make a branch appointment or you can make a phone appointment, right? And you get to talk to the MSR, the representative in the branch, but you don't have to go to the branch. Then the next step is like, okay, wouldn't that be even better if it was virtually, right? Where the member could see the MSR that they may have opened the account with a month ago instead of just doing phones. So we don't have the ability yet to do this. We're looking at Typhoon to kind of bring that to us. But I think that is somewhere along the line, I do believe that that will be the next big thing in our industry. We thought voice banking, but voice banking hasn't really kicked off yet, because I think a lot of members, well, the functionality isn't there yet completely, right? So there's a lot of improvement needs to be done. But I think COVID-19 with being remote and members having adjusted to it, even so some of them, they're happy to go back to the branches. But I think some of it will stick, right? That remote delivery will stick. And I want to make sure that we can deliver it in the best possible way. So if they don't want to travel to a branch, they don't have to, but they get the same experience as being inside a branch. So I think that's going to be our next big focus.
I love it. Well, one of the things that I really love about you, Margarete, is just you are a true collaborator in every sense of the word. I see it in so many different avenues and venues. And so I love to hear what other people are saying. I can definitely attest that that is very true. So speaking of that, where can people go to connect with you, learn more about you, learn more about Star One?
Well, obviously, they can go on star1.org, our website, and see what we're doing, what we're offering. And then to contact me, definitely I'm on LinkedIn, reach out to me. So yeah, I think it's probably the best way. Oh, I can give you my email address, margarete@star1.org.
Add to that, your IS team is just, I can hear them pounding on your door right now. Don't do it, Margarete.
So, no, I love it. I do love it. I love talking with other people because I think in the conversations, there's always so much. It generates so much energy. You know how you said Fred energizes you. And that's when you get a couple of people in a room that have, not even in a room, but just to get together that have the same kind of passion and focus. There's so much good that comes out of those conversations. So
I agree. This is an ecosystem in every sense of the word. And we are only as good as all of us that contribute, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Margarete. It is always a pleasure. You are such a gem. Just thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining me on the Digital Banking Podcast, Margarete. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast powered by Typhoon. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Typhoon. Everyone builds features. Not everyone builds relationships. We build both.